Welcome to video 8.4 about properties of rhombuses, rectangles, and squares. This is part 2. And here we're going to really work on the coordinate proofs of how can you prove a rectangle, a rhombus, or a square. Please take out your quadrilateral tree. This will be extremely helpful as we take these notes. So, example 1. Prove that a quadrilateral ABCD with vertices below is a rectangle. Well, before we can jump to rectangle, we have to realize we have to prove it's a parallelogram first. So first thing is parallelogram. Well, we have 6 ways to prove it's a parallelogram. All should be written on your family tree. I'm going to choose to do showing that both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. That's how I'm going to show. So this is, first thing you have to do is prove it's a parallelogram. You have 6 ways. I'm choosing both pairs of opposite sides parallel. Well, before I do that, why don't I just graph it? So A is 1, 1. B is 5, 3. C is 4, 5. And D is 0, 3. Okay, so here's my shape. Now, first thing is, okay, is it a parallelogram? Are both pairs of opposite sides parallel? Well, look at this. Slope of AD is going to look like this. Slope is y1 minus y2 over x2 minus x1 would equal negative 2 over 1. So that slope is negative 2. Well, the side opposite to AD is BC. So let's find that slope. 3 minus 5, 5 minus 4, getting negative 2 over 1 as well. Okay, so I have one pair of parallel sides. That's not enough to prove it, though. I need both sides. So let me prove the slope of DC. Well, DC, 5 minus 3, 4 minus 0. That gives me a slope of 2 over 4, also 1/2. The side opposite to DC is AB. That would be 3 minus 1, 5 minus 1. So that is 2 over 4, again, 1/2. So check, check, I now have a parallelogram. Really important, put this statement. Yes, parallelogram. Because both pairs of opposite sides parallel. This is crucial. If you are able to do this, then you are golden for this chapter. Well, great, I'm a parallelogram. Now, my whole goal is proving it's a rhombus. So that will be rectangle. So step 2 is let's prove it's a rectangle. Looking at your family tree again, for rectangle, there's 2 new ways to prove it's a rectangle. All 4 angles need to be right angles, or your diagonals are congruent. It doesn't matter which way you choose. I'm going to choose to show that there are 4 right angles. Why am I choosing that? Well, I just need to prove that these are 90 degrees. In other words, that the slopes of AD and AB are perpendicular, opposite reciprocal. Well, look at it. The slope of AD is negative 2, and the slope of AB is 1/2. These are perpendicular to each other. They are opposite reciprocal. That's a 90-degree angle. It's also good to prove at least one more is 90 degrees. So I'm going to show slope of, let's go DC. Slope of DC is 1/2. And then the slope of CB is negative 2, and again, they are perpendicular. Huge. Now I'm a rectangle. So overall, write a statement. Yes, rectangle, because all 4 angles are 90 degrees. Somehow, something like that. Okay, first thing parallelogram, then rectangle. Looking at your chart is extremely helpful because it tells you what to do. Heading down to example 2. This says prove that the quadrilateral MNFJ is a rhombus. Well, before you can do that, step 1, like before, is prove it's a parallelogram. Okay, let me draw my picture. N is 3, 6. Move over 10. 8, 6 is F, and J is 4, 3. Proving this is a rhombus. Okay, first parallelogram. Looking at it, you have 6 ways to prove. I'm going to choose to prove that, let's do diagonals bisect each other. Well, that means I need to find the midpoint of my diagonals. So diagonals go across. So I'm going to find the midpoint of MF. Well, midpoint formula again is you add your x's. So it's going to be -1 plus 8 divided in half. Add your y's. 3 plus 6 divided by 2. So that midpoint of MF is 7 over 2, comma 9 over 2. Now I need to prove that it's the same midpoint of NJ. Make sure those are bisected. So midpoint of NJ, let's add our x's, divide in half, add our y's, divide in half. So the midpoint of my other diagonal is also 7 halves, 9 halves. So big thing, yes, parallelogram, because diagonals bisect. Please make sure you're telling us the reason that it is true. If you did not show diagonals bisect, instead if you showed that both pairs of opposite sides are equal, that's fine. Just make sure you explain that in your little sentence here. Now, great. I'm in the parallelogram family. I now need to prove it's a rhombus. So that is part 2. Am I a rhombus? Well, looking at our tree, we have 3 ways to prove a rhombus. 4 congruent sides, diagonals perpendicular, or diagonals bisect opposite angles. I'm going to stick with diagonals perpendicular. The reason why is I already know a little bit about perpendicular from the example above. Perpendicular means opposite reciprocal. So if I can find the slopes of both diagonals and their opposite reciprocal, then I have perpendicular diagonals. So here we go. The slope of MF is going to equal 6 minus 3 over 8 minus -1 or plus 1. So you get your slope of 3 over 9, simplifies to 1/3. Okay, that's my one slope of MF. Well, let's do my slope of my other one. So that is NJ, my other diagonal. 6 minus 3 over 3 minus 4. So 3 over -1, which is -3. The slope of NJ is -3. Looking at these two slopes, they are definitely perpendicular, opposite reciprocal. So, yes, rhombus, because diagonals are perpendicular. Again, if you proved it a different way, if you proved using 4 sides congruent, by all means go for it. Just make sure you explain that in your sentence. Okay, 2 more examples to go. Example 3, determine the classification of the following quadrilateral. So this makes you take a little bit more ownership to figure out what shape it is. Let's start out with drawing our picture. So -1, 0, that's H. 3, 3 is E. 6, -1 is L. 2, -4 is P. A nice shape here for quadrilateral HELP, H-E-L-P. These are the questions you should be asking yourself, similar to what we did before. First thing, is it even a parallelogram? You have 6 ways to prove it. I'm going to choose, looking at my chart, I'm going to do that both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. I'm going to use that distance formula idea. Now you do have your calculator. Keep in mind you might have to prove it without a calculator, so don't get used to using that formula all the time, that program that we programmed in our calculators. Use it as a resource. So if I'm going to start, I'm going to do side, I'll do EH or HE, either one. So using that distance, I'm going to first show it using the formula, just to make sure we don't forget it. So 0 minus 3, then you would have -1 minus 3. When you simplify, -3 squared, -4 squared. So I have a 9 plus 16, which is square root of 25. So in the end, HE would be 5. Well, what side is opposite of HE? Well, that would be PL. So now find PL. This time I'm going to use my calculator. Use the program on there. Typing it in, you actually get PL equals 5 as well. So look at, 2 of my opposite sides are congruent. I'm getting there. I have 2 more sides to prove though. I'm going to show, let's do HP next. I'm going to show that with the distance formula. Again, great practice. So you have -1 minus 2, 0 plus 4, so -3 squared plus 4 squared. Again, you get square root of 9 plus 16, which is square root of 25. So HP is also 5. Then the last side is EL. I'm going to use my calculator function for that, and I actually find that it's 5 as well. Please make sure you are trying these on your calculator. If you cannot get these values, please talk to your teacher to make sure you understand how to use that function on your calculator. Saves you some time. So, am I a parallelogram? Well, yes. Oh, we're out of room, guys. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm a parallelogram. So, yes. Parallelogram. And I say because opposite sides are congruent. Okay, once I'm in there, my next question is, what could it be? Could it be a rectangle? Could it be a rhombus? Could it be a square? I can read. Well, let's see. Now that I'm in that family, these are all possibilities. It could be a square. It could be a rhombus. It could be a rectangle. We now just have to prove each one. Well, right off the bat, I actually can prove it's a rhombus. I know it's a rhombus because one of the criteria is at 4 congruent sides. Well, all of these sides are equal. So, say yes, a rhombus, because 4 congruent sides. Well, look at that, already a rhombus. Part 3 is further investigation. Well, if I know it's a rhombus, let me check if it's a rectangle now. That's my second option. Rectangle? Maybe. Looking at the chart, I have 2 new ways. I can prove that diagonals are equal, or I have 4 right angles. I'm going to choose to do the diagonals congruent, and I'll practice a little distance formula. So my diagonals are HL and EP. So HL, do the distance formula if you would like. I'll show it one more time. So HL would be -1 minus 6 squared, and 0 plus 1 squared. That would give me -7 squared plus 1 squared, so 49 plus 1, which is the square root of 50. Please make sure you know how to simplify the square root of 50. Perfect square to come out would be 25. So you have 5 root 2. Now, if you want to prove that it is congruent to diagonal EP, if you used your calculator, it will not give you that square root. So be aware, it will give you a decimal, and you need to verify that it's the same. If you don't want to deal with any of that, just do distance formula again. You're going to be an expert at it by now. So 3 minus 2, 3 plus 4, square root of 1 squared plus square root of 7 squared. Oh, looking good. So EP is also 5 root 2. So I am indeed a rectangle as well. So yes, rectangle, because diagonals congruent. Again, I chose it that way. You can choose it any way to write it. Okay, almost done. If it is a parallelogram, a rectangle, a rhombus, then my overall shape is a square. Right? You have all the characteristics. You are a parallelogram. You are a rhombus. You are a rectangle. Together, that makes you a square. So in the end, from the beginning, this quadrilateral is a square, and make sure you have all of these reasonings with it. Okay, moving on to the last one. This one, we took away all the help we could give you. We're asking you to classify it. Take a moment, pause the video, try it on your own, and let's see what you can do. If you're stuck, drawing a picture is very helpful. My first thing is proving it's a parallelogram. There's 6 ways to prove it. I'm going to prove opposite sides parallel. I'm choosing that. There's no rhyme or reason why. I'm going to prove it though. So my slopes, take a moment, get your slopes. MU -3 over -6. Well, that is a positive 1/2. My side opposite of MU is PJ, which is -2 minus 1 over -4 minus 2. So it's again -3 over -6, so that is 1/2. Okay, I got some parallel sides. I got one set to do two more. Slope of UJ, 1 minus 3, 2 minus 1, -2 over 1, -2. Last slope, MP, -2 minus 0, -4 plus 5. So you get -2 over 1, which is also -2. So like there, I have my parallel sides. Be specific. Yes, parallelogram. Because I proved that both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. That's how I proved it. If you did a different way, make sure you write that. Now my next idea is to prove either rectangle or rhombus. Why don't I just start with rectangle? So my second thing is proving, is it a rectangle? Well, with rectangle, I can prove 4 congruent angles or diagonals are congruent. Well, because I know the slopes, I'm going to go back to the idea of proving that right angle idea. If I can prove that the slopes are perpendicular, I have my right angles. So if I look at the slope of MU, it's 1/2. And the slope of MU, what about UJ, is -2. These are perpendicular. That means I would have a right angle. One more just for safekeepings. Slope of PJ is also 1/2. And the slope of MP is -2. Perpendicular. So, yes, rectangle, because 4 congruent angles, or 4 90-degree angles. Okay, now if it's a rectangle, let's see if I can prove it's a rhombus. While looking at it, I need to either prove 4 sides are equal, diagonals perpendicular, or diagonals bisect opposite angles. I want you to take this as your little to-do assignment. Determine, is it a rhombus? If so, is it a square? Please show work to support here. We'll come to class tomorrow and make sure you have this right and tell me the overall shape of this quadrilateral. Jump. Is it a rectangle, rhombus, square? Good luck.